You've been told a comforting lie, that rejection is simply about incompatibility, that when someone pulls away from you, it's because the relationship wasn't meant to be. But what if I told you that rejection, especially emotional, rejection is not about logic nor about compatibility, but about something far more primal? What if rejection feels like personal collapse because it is? Ask yourself, why does her silence, her sudden coldness, or her retreat feel as though a part of your very identity has been severed? Why does it ignite not just sadness, but a sensation of freefall, as though the ground beneath your existence has disintegrated? Carl Jung would say, because your sense of self is not as autonomous as you believe. It is interwoven with projections, unconscious attachments, and archetypal bonds. You are not mourning her departure. You are mourning the collapse of a psychic construct that you mistook for your very being. Rejection is not a surface-level bruise. It is a psychic amputation. The person who pulls away doesn't just exit your life. They take with them a piece of the narrative you've built about yourself. The one who is loved, the one who is chosen, the one who is safe. And when that narrative collapses, so do. But what if I told you that this collapse is necessary? That the very implosion you are desperate to avoid is, in fact, the gateway to your psychological liberation? The truth is unsettling. You cannot meet your true self until the false self, the persona you've so carefully crafted, has been shattered by forces beyond your control. Rejection is not an accident. It is a summons, a brutal, merciless summons. You think you're grieving her, but you're wrong. You are grieving the destruction of an archetype, the unconscious image of connection and acceptance that you projected onto her. In Jungian terms, it is the anima, the inner feminine archetype that shapes your ideals of love, intimacy, and emotional safety. When she rejects you, it's not just her walking away. It's your unconscious severing you from the idealized image you've spent your life unconsciously pursuing. Why does it feel like death? Because the anima is not a casual fantasy. She is an ancient psychic force, an inherited pattern that lives in your collective unconscious. She seduces you with the promise of wholeness, of fusion, of salvation from your inner fragmentation. And when she turns cold, distant, indifferent, your psyche doesn't just register loss. It registers annihilation. This is why emotional rejection feels so catastrophic. It is not the loss of a person. It is the symbolic death of a god within you. Jung warned us, when we remain unconscious of our projections, we become slaves to them. We fall in love with our own archetypes, mistaking them for real people. We surrender our psychological sovereignty to illusions. Her rejection is a rupture, but it is also a revelation. It exposes the hollow scaffolding upon which your sense of self precariously rests. It demands that you confront not her absence but your own inner void. But will you have the courage to look into that abyss? Or will you frantically seek another to fill the space, to rebuild the same fragile illusion? The collapse has already begun, and there is no going back. You've spent your entire life constructing a persona, a mask, a facade that you present to the world, crafted carefully to be lovable, desirable, invulnerable. But rejection shatters that mask. Have you noticed how, after being emotionally rejected, you don't just question her affection, you question your very worth, your desirability, your competence, your adequacy, all suddenly feel like illusions. Why? Because they are. The persona was never you. It was a defensive architecture built to shield you from the terror of rejection, abandonment, and ultimately, from the horror of confronting your own inner fractures. Carl Jung taught that the persona is necessary for social life, but fatal when mistaken for the self. Rejection doesn't merely damage your image. It obliterates the illusion that your identity was ever secure. This is why rejection feels like a personal collapse, because it destroys the fictitious stability you've clung to for survival. And yet, isn't this destruction also a dark gift? When the persona cracks, what emerges from beneath? The sorrowful child, the wounded lover, the unseen self that has been buried under layers of performance and adaptation. Rejection doesn't just take something away. It reveals what you've been hiding, even from yourself. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people will rush to reconstruct the persona, to patch the cracks, to restore the illusion of wholeness. Few will sit in the ruins and listen to what the silence has to say. Will you? Because only in the rubble of the shattered persona can the true self begin to stir. Rejection does not just dismantle your persona. It awakens something far more terrifying. Your shadow. The shadow is everything you've denied, repressed, or disowned about yourself. It is the reservoir of rage, grief, longing, and fear that you've spent your life pretending doesn't exist. But when rejection rips through your defenses, the shadow surges forward, uninvited and uncontrollable. Have you noticed the sudden irrational anger, the self-loathing, the urge to diminish yourself, or worse, to hurt the one who walked away? These are not aberrations. They are the natural consequence of your psyche being forced to confront its own darkness. Carl Jung warned that when the shadow is ignored, it governs us from behind the scenes, distorting our relationships, sabotaging our desires, and keeping us trapped in cycles of unconscious repetition. Rejection is the catalyst that makes the shadow visible. But most people cannot bear this confrontation. They rush to numb the pain, to distract themselves, to seek new validation, to resurrect the old persona with another face, another fantasy. But you are here, standing in the ruins, with the shadow staring back at you. What will you do now? Will you turn away and return to the comfortable lie, or will you descend further into the underworld of your own psyche? The shadow is not your enemy. It is your unclaimed self, waiting for integration. But integration demands suffering, humility, and the courage to face the very parts of yourself you've been taught to despise. Are you ready for that confrontation? Or will you flee as you always have? The choice is yours. Your instinct is to escape, to run from the wreckage, to distance yourself from the pain, to pretend that the collapse never happened. Isn't that what you've always done? When faced with discomfort, with the raw exposure of your wounds, you retreat into distractions, into shallow relationships, into work, into anything that keeps you from feeling the unbearable ache of rejection. But Carl Jung would ask, who, exactly, are you running from? It is not her. It is not even the pain. You are running from yourself, from the unbearable truth that you are not whole, that you are fragmented, that parts of you have never been acknowledged, let alone integrated. And yet, paradoxically, every time you run, you deepen the wound. You entrench the division within yourself, reinforcing the split between the persona you show the world and the shadow you bury in darkness. This is why rejection doesn't just hurt in the moment. It haunts you. It follows you from one relationship to the next, disguised in different faces, different names, but always carrying the same lesson. You cannot outrun your unconscious. The more you resist, the more it will find ways to force itself into your awareness, through anxiety, depression, destructive behaviors, and yes, through the recurring experience of rejection. Every collapse is a summons, a demand from the depths of your psyche. Stop running, stand still, turn around, and face what you've spent your entire life evading. But will you finally answer that call? Or will you once again choose the familiar path of denial? The road forks here. One leads to another illusion, the other to transformation. You believe this is an isolated event, a unique tragedy that has struck your life by chance. But what if I told you it is not? It is a pattern, an archetypal cycle written deep within your unconscious, repeating itself with ruthless precision until you finally awaken to its meaning. Carl Jung taught that the psyche is governed by archetypes, universal, patterns of behavior and experience that transcend personal history. They are not yours alone. They belong to all of humanity. Rejection is one such archetype, the wound of abandonment, the terror of unworthiness, the desperate longing for connection. These are not your private sorrows. They are part of a collective myth playing out through you, over and over until you break the cycle through consciousness and integration. How many times have you lived this story? You meet someone who ignites the archetypal promise, the anima offering love, the persona basking in validation, the shadow safely hidden, but then the inevitable collapse. She pulls away. You spiral into despair, the shadow surges, the persona fractures, and once the dust settles, you begin again, with someone new, believing that this time it will be different, but it never is, because the pattern is not out there, it is within you. Until you confront the unconscious forces that shape your desires, your attachments, and your defenses, you will continue to live the same tragedy, dressed in different costumes. Rejection is not random cruelty. It is the psyche's ruthless attempt to wake you up. Will you finally see it for what it is? Or will you continue to sleepwalk through the same archetypal nightmare? The choice is as terrifying as it is liberating. You've been indoctrinated into a dangerous myth, the myth of romantic salvation. From childhood, you were taught that love would complete you, that another person would heal your wounds, fill your emptiness, and make you whole. But Jung would tell you this is the most seductive and destructive illusion of all, because no one can complete you. When you attach your sense of worth, your hope for happiness, and your vision of wholeness to another human being, you are setting the stage for inevitable collapse. Rejection devastates you because it exposes the hollowness of the myth you've worshipped your entire life. Have you ever asked yourself, why does love feel like salvation, and rejection like damnation? It is because you've projected onto the other person not only your desires, but your very soul. The anima, the inner ideal of feminine love and nurturance, is cast outward onto her, and when she withdraws, it feels as though your soul itself is being ripped away. But this is a lie. She was never your salvation. She was a mirror reflecting back your unconscious longing for wholeness, a longing that can only be fulfilled through inner work, not external attachment. Jung warned that projecting the anima outward prevents individuation, the psychological process of becoming a whole and integrated self. Rejection feels like personal collapse because it threatens the myth you've mistaken for truth. But here's the revelation. The collapse of the myth is the beginning of your liberation. When the illusion dies, something else can be born. Something real, something authentic, something that no one can give you, and no one can take away. But can you endure the death of your cherished fantasy long enough to glimpse the possibility of true selfhood? The myth is crumbling. Are you ready to see what lies beyond it? This collapse you're experiencing, it is not a punishment. It is a call, the call to individuation. Carl Jung described individuation as the process through which a person becomes whole, not by seeking completion in others, but by integrating the disparate, unconscious parts of themselves. Rejection is the crucible that initiates this journey. It forces you to confront the painful truth that you are not yet whole, that you have been living through projections, fantasies, and defensive personas rather than through authentic selfhood. Ask yourself, who are you without her? Without the fantasy, the role, the mask? Do you even know? Most people, when faced with this question, recoil in terror. They rush to fill the void, to patch the persona, to re-enter the cycle of projection and rejection. But you have been given a rare opportunity. This collapse is the gateway to a new kind of life. A life not dictated by unconscious archetypes, but shaped by conscious integration. It requires that you gather the fragments of your psyche, the disowned shadow, the seductive anima, the brittle persona, and bring them together into a unified whole. This is not a comfortable process. It is a descent into your own underworld, a confrontation with every fear and longing you've ever avoided. But it is also the only path to genuine freedom. Because once you are whole within yourself, rejection can no longer destroy you. It may, still wound, But it will no longer annihilate. You will no longer collapse because your identity will no longer be built on illusions. The call has been issued. Will you answer? Or will you continue to run, to hide, to cling to the myth of salvation through another? The choice is before you. Now you stand at the precipice, the place where most turn back, the pain of rejection, the exposure of your inner fragmentation, the collapse of your cherished illusions. It all feels unbearable, and so many retreat. They rebuild the persona, suppress the shadow, and resume the endless cycle of projection, chasing love not for connection, but for anesthesia. But you have seen too much now, haven't you? You know that to run is to condemn yourself to live the same story over and over again. Different faces, different names, same collapse. Carl Jung warned that what you fail to integrate will return to haunt you. Every disowned part of your psyche will reemerge in your life, disguised as fate, as misfortune, as inexplicable suffering. So the question is no longer, why did she reject you? The question is, will you use this rejection to awaken, or to further entrench yourself in unconscious repetition? Integration means gathering the lost, disowned parts of yourself and accepting them, not as flaws to be hidden, but as essential components of your wholeness. It means recognizing that love is not salvation. It is reflection. The other does not complete you. They reveal you, and when they leave, they offer you the greatest gift, the opportunity to complete yourself. But this path demands courage. It requires that you walk alone for a time, that you sit in the ashes of your former self, that you resist the urge to run back into the arms of illusion. Few choose this path, but those who do, they become something rare in this world, whole, integrated, sovereign. What will you choose, the cycle or the self? If you have followed me this far, then you already know. The collapse you feared, the one you believed would destroy you, was never your enemy. It was your liberation. Carl Jung understood that the psyche does not evolve through comfort, but through crisis. Through the disintegration of the false self, through the confrontation with the shadow, through the death of the persona, a new form of being becomes possible. This is the paradox of emotional rejection. What feels like devastation is, in truth, initiation. You have been initiated into the deepest truth of the human condition, that no one can save you but yourself. No lover, no partner, no external force can grant you the wholeness you seek. That wholeness has been waiting within you all along, buried beneath layers of defense, fear, and illusion. And now, in the aftermath of collapse, with the ruins of your projections smoldering around you, you are finally free to see it. Do you feel it? That quiet, almost imperceptible pulse of something new. It is not the desperate clinging of the persona, nor the seductive fantasy of the anima. It is something more elemental. It is you, the self, not as an image, not as a role, but as an integrated being, capable of standing alone, of loving without losing yourself, of suffering without collapsing. This is the liberation that rejection offers to those brave enough to endure its agonizing lessons. Few will ever know this freedom. Most will return to the cycle, seeking once again the comfort of illusions, fearing the silence that follows collapse. But you have seen the truth, and once you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. Welcome to your new life. The collapse is over, but your transformation has only just begun.